Okay, so what happens when an entire profession, a profession literally built to help people, starts to wonder if it's actually working? It's a huge question, right? Well, today we're going to dive into a system that was born right out of that exact crisis. And it didn't just, tweak the rules. It completely tore up the old playbook and wrote a new one. We're talking about the task-centered system.
To really get why this system was such a big deal, you have to go back to this moment of crisis. For decades, social work and fields like it were running on tradition and some pretty complex theories. But then researchers started asking this really simple, kind of nagging question. Is any of this actually helping anyone?
And the results? Honestly, they were kind of staggering. Study after study kept coming back with, well, not much. There was very little hard proof that these long drawn-out interventions were any better than just a little bit of help, or in some cases, no help at all. You can imagine, this kicked off a huge crisis of confidence that just shook the whole profession. The very reason for their existence was being questioned.
So clearly, something had to give, right? Out of all that uncertainty, this new, really pragmatic approach started to take shape. And the whole point was to stop focusing on abstract theories and start focusing on action, on efficiency, and on results you could actually see.
Now, this new model didn't just pop up out of thin air. It was really an evolution. It kind of stood on the shoulders of giants, like Helen Harris Perlman, who was already focused on problem solving way back in the 50s. And it built directly on some game-changing research by William Reid and Anne Shine that showed, hey, maybe brief, focused therapy could be just as good, if not better, than the super long-term stuff. So what is it, really? The core idea is actually pretty simple and, honestly, kind of brilliant. Instead of spending forever digging into the past, the focus snaps to the here and now and the future. You sit down with the client, you figure out one specific, solvable problem, and then you build an action plan together, a set of actual, concrete tasks to tackle it head on. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. What were these foundational principles? What made this model such a radical break from everything that had come before it? These principles, they were a total game changer. First, the work is brief on purpose. Then, and this is huge, the client is in the driver's seat. They are the expert on their own life, so they get to say what the problem is. Success isn't some fuzzy feeling of getting better. No, success is measured by whether or not you did the tasks. And the whole thing is a partnership, not some expert telling a client what to do.
And that number, 8 to 12 sessions, that is everything. The entire process is designed to be lean and efficient, usually lasting just a couple of months. That tight time frame creates this incredible focus. It respects the client's time, and it's based on solid research that shows most of the real change happens early on in the process anyway.
This quote right here, it really gets to the soul of what made this model so revolutionary. The focus is on what the client says they want, not on what some therapist or agency thinks they really need deep down. I mean, that's a massive shift in power, putting the client's own goals front and center.
Okay, so that's the theory, but how does it actually work in a real session? It's not as simple as just asking, so, what's your problem? It all starts with what might be the most important part of the whole thing, getting crystal clear on what the problem actually is.
You can think of this process like a funnel. A client might walk in with this storm of issues, stress at work, fighting with their family, just feeling anxious all the time. The practitioner's job is to help them sort through all that, figure out what's the most pressing thing right now, and then reframe it. So you go from something vague like, I'm unhappy, to something super specific like, I want to have one argument-free conversation with my teenager this week. See? Now that is a target you can actually aim for. But here's a really good question. What do you do when the client doesn't even want to be there? Well, the model is pretty smart about this. It makes a clear distinction between two very different types of clients. And this is so important for anyone in a helping role. An applicant is someone who comes to you. They're a volunteer. Your job is to help them get clear on their goals. But a respondent, well, they're there because a judge or their boss told them to be. They might be totally resistant, maybe even deny there's a problem. With a respondent, your first job isn't to solve the big problem, it's to find some common ground, any little piece of the situation that the client themselves will agree is something they'd like to change.
So this all started back in the 70s. Why are we still talking about it today? Well, because it worked. And its core ideas were so practical and powerful that they've been influencing countless helping professions for decades now.
This chart really shows you the before and after. We went from these fuzzy, vague goals to a world of accountability. Success wasn't just a feeling anymore. It was something you could actually point to and measure. Did the client do the tasks they agreed to? Did that target problem actually get better? It brought a whole new level of clarity to the work. So when you boil it all down, what's the lasting impact? The task-centered system was way more than just another theory. It was a practical toolkit. It brought efficiency and accountability. It empowered clients. It gave practitioners a clear roadmap and proved that real change could come from focusing on doing, not just talking. And that kind of leaves us with this one big, provocative thought. In a world full of these massive, complex problems, maybe the most powerful tool we have for change is just getting really, really good at defining the very next manageable task.